Hi, everybody. This is Nicola filling in for Christine for today's EMomNow chat, which is we're talking about human resources best practices. We're joined with Judy and Geraldine. And did you guys want to do a quick introduction about Max People Perform?
Great, thank you. I'm Julie Rubin Rodney. I'm the CEO and founder of Max People Perform. I'm here with my colleague Geraldine Hugh, and you'll hear a lot about HR from her. She's a senior consultant here at Max People Perform. Our organization started 10 years ago. It started with the foundation of learning and development and training, and really evolved. We're very much our business now as an HR consulting firm, where we help small to mid-sized businesses as an outsourced HR option. So all the type of questions you're asking today about employees, about hiring employees, how to set them up for success, is really how our consultants spend their every day. So post this session, if people want to reach out to us about some of your employee issues, you can reach out and we'll make sure you get our email addresses and also our website address. So I will pass it back over to you.
Okay, great. So we're going to get going right away. So we know that human resources is an integral part. Not just about your business, but also about your brand. So when you're hiring your first person, they have to kind of embody what your business is about. So do you want to explain a little bit about hire slow and fire fast and what that means?
I'll let you start.
So we believe very strongly in the philosophy of hiring slow and firing fast, because we really believe that you need to take your time in really understanding what you need when you hire people, and really taking the time to make sure that they fit with the culture, even if it's just a couple of people, that they actually can interact well with the few people that they will be working with. They fit with your client base. All of those things, you really need to kind of look at it more holistically. But when you've made the decision that it's not working, that you actually do that quickly, and you get the right support in terms of making sure that the termination is handled well and effectively. But you need to, when you make that decision, you need to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say from our experience, us being a small, maybe I'm a mom entrepreneur. I've started this business when I left a larger firm and I had 2 kids, and I started in my house as a mom entrepreneur. Now we're an organization of 12 people, but as we hired each person as our business grew, it was so critical. We'll talk about fit in a little bit, but when we're hiring, one of our key criteria is fit, and will they fit our culture? Because when you're in a large organization and the fit isn't fully there, you're going to end up, you can hide in a large company, but if you're a one-person operation, you're going to hire the first employee, the second employee. They are critical to our business, and will be, and really need to fit. As Geraldine said, we do in our firm spend quite a bit of time, unfortunately, terminating for our clients and helping them terminate employees. And often we find the longer that it doesn't go away. If you have an employee issue now, you want to try to get them back on track. But if you've done everything to performance manage the employee, set them up for success, and it still doesn't work, that your probably best bet would be to terminate. And I was given advice as an entrepreneur when I first started the business, and they said if at night you're lying in bed and you're talking to your spouse or significant other at night about an employee, and it keeps happening night after night or at the dinner table, it's probably time to let that person go. So it's at that point when you realize you're spending more of your energy talking about the employee that's not working than probably letting them go and trying to hire someone who fits.
Right. I happen to be working right now with a family-run business, and they know that they need to terminate this person, and it's probably taking up more of the company's resources than it should, and making that decision to terminate is definitely something that they need to go forward with.
So let's go back to fit then. Like, what does fit mean, and how do you determine if someone's got the right fit for your business?
I think that's a really, sometimes it's a gut feel, but more than that, you really need to determine your own culture, what's going to work for you. So if you're a business that is dealing mostly with young mothers, for instance, or if it's a you're dealing with construction trades or whatever that it is that you're dealing with, you kind of need to understand a little more about what is going to work. So you really need to kind of ask yourself some questions about you know, what you're not looking for, and sometimes that can define more closely what you do know you need. And we believe very strongly in kind of, you know, developing a profile for the job, and sometimes different jobs actually require kind of a different profile in terms of if you're looking for a salesperson, for instance, or if you were looking for someone who's going to, you know, deal with customer complaints. There's different things that you're going to be looking for, but an overall fit for the organization is also very important.
Right.
One of
I'm guessing a lot of that is knowing like the culture of your environment too, right?
One of the things, I mean, this is a entrepreneurial women, entrepreneurial moms, and one of our values at Max People Perform is entrepreneurial spirit. So when we're hiring, a number of the questions we ask in the hiring process are all around entrepreneurship. You know, are you able to look for opportunities? What does your network look like? What was the last event you went to? How do you meet people? And if we have someone come to an interview and they don't show a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, you know, they may say things like, I don't really have a network. I don't, you know, maybe I don't go to a lot of events. I don't really use social media very often. You know, for us, any of those would be red flags that this person is not a fit, because we're looking for someone who's going to have that entrepreneurial spirit. And as a mom entrepreneur, when I started the business, it was really important. The first employee we hired, her background was customer service. And we knew, even though we were an HR firm, the number one thing we needed was someone who knew how to relate to customers and knew how to build relationships. So that would be an example of fit.
Right. Okay, so let's get on to the next one then. So you're creating a job description, and obviously, you know, fit and corporate culture is, you know, going to fit in there. Can we talk a little bit about like core key skill sets and behaviors that a position, like are they important, and what should you include and what should you not bother including?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I see a lot in working with small businesses is that oftentimes it's easier to go on fit and not necessarily what you need in that job. So it's
Right.
kind of like, I know this person's going to fit. You know, I want the person to do a lot of different things because it's a small business. It's not going to be, you know, this kind of niche thing that they're only doing 1, 2, and 3. They're going to have to do, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I think it's important to really define those some core areas that you're going to have that person do. And you have to make sure that they can do the absolute core areas. What I often find is that small businesses will go, they'll learn the other things, but you actually need them to hit the ground running. So when you have to be able to identify, you know, those key kind of components that you need, whether it's Excel, because you've got a lot of Excel that you want to track things on, and this person's their Excel skills are, you know, beginner, and you really need someone with intermediate advanced. You really need to kind of put it down on paper and make sure to kind of flush that out in an interview. So that's, you know, that would be my advice in terms of definitely dealing with, you know, fit is important, but being able to do the core parts of the job is also very important.
You know, I want to just add to that on, you know, one of the points around skill and being, you know, you do this job description, that it will change a lot over time as well. So what I have found as a business owner, that what my business needed 10 years ago changed after about 2 years and changed after 4 years. So one of the things, as you know, a mom entrepreneur, an entrepreneur, in any entrepreneur who's come online today, that as your business is growing, the skill that you are hiring for, I expect that within a year, 2 years time, that role has changed and what your business needs has changed.
So assuming that you have employees, then do you think it's wise to ask the employees what they think will be a good fit for a position?
You mean existing employees when you're out looking for? Okay. So I'm going to start on that one, because one of the things, it goes back.
Oh.
Is everyone okay? You can see me? We're good? Okay, send us a note if we're not visible to the broadcast.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things is that when you are bringing on someone to your team, you know, because you're small, if you're a small entrepreneur, every person has to mesh. So when we're hiring, we do panel interviews. So panel interviews in the sense that we'll bring in a number of candidates, but we'll also have a number of our staff interviewing as well. So at least 4 of our employees will be involved in the hiring process. And ideally, no one is hired unless everyone has met that person. So if you're a CEO of an organization, you go meet someone for coffee, you really like them, you hire them on the spot, I would say you've probably done all the wrong things. One, you haven't thought about the job, you haven't thought about what your business needs, you haven't gone back to survey a few things with employees, you haven't really defined the job. So all of that will eventually come back in some way, even if you are hiring the right person, and they will be the best person, but to do a little bit of due diligence would be helpful.
Right. And then what do you do? I mean, it's your first employee. You've got really no one to kind of bounce back your ideas off, aside from maybe your spouse or your best friend. Like, what are some good things to do when you're hiring, like, your very first employee?
I think I mentioned before, really kind of writing down what you're looking for and really trying to figure that out, and not just saying, I kind of like this person, I'm gonna make this work. You really have to kind of define what it is that you need at this stage. And as Julie talked about, at this stage, and it'll change in a year, but will this person be able to work with you in terms of being able to move towards the same things that you're moving towards? So I think you have to ask some very detailed questions. Even if your gut's telling you this is a good fit, you still need to kind of flush out those many areas. So you really should be, very prepared for the interview. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do, the coffee, this feels right, let's just make it happen. They needed someone yesterday to help out with them. The price or the compensation is right. So they, make the decision to hire. But I really think you need to do your due diligence, and you do need to kind of, define a few of the questions.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because I think if you're hiring your first person, I think, as women, we often go with our intuition and our gut. But then the key difference then is going from, using your gut, but then, also flicking on your business switch as well and saying, I probably like this person, but would they be best for the job, right?
I just want to build off of something Geraldine said. I think is really important, is that you really want to make it formal. It's worth, when we can help. If anyone after wants to reach out to us, we can send you some samples of interview questions, but that you really take the time to interview that person properly and ask the questions and make it very formal. And even ideally, before you hire that person, send it out on your LinkedIn that you're also looking to hire, so you always have a pool of candidates that you're at least comparing to, even if you think you're the best person, but really try to go through some type of formal interview.
Right.
Because it's easy to hire, it's very hard to fire.
Yes. So let's talk about like the interview questions. Now, I used to work in HR, so I know from experience some of the questions that we used to have our hiring management ask, and we would sit there and go, oh, you can't, what are you doing? But for people that wouldn't know, like, what kind of questions are totally off limits?
I mean, I think we think we know what questions are legally correct and which ones are not legal to ask, and those certainly go around, sexual orientation, religion, family status, all of those things. You can't ask questions like that. But sometimes what happens is people share information with you that isn't relevant to the job, but they're just chit-chatting. So they might share some information about their family, or they might my kids and some sort of maybe daycare arrangement. So they might be talking about something that comes up, or a school that you get, that you understand now their religious thing. So my advice there is, you can't kind of totally ignore it, but you need to focus back on the more structured questions and the things that are related to the job, and not go down the path that's talking more from a personal perspective, that you're getting some information.
Yeah. We had one manager that used to say, your name is McManus. Oh, you're Irish, or you're Scottish. I'm like, no, you can't comment on that. It's just, and so very small, simple things. You can't really talk about people's ethnicity, or because it could lead into other stuff. And you would think that you're just bantering, but really you're going into an area where you just can't go. So, and then what are more kind of better questions to ask. So we're talking about skill set and like what if a job is part time and these people have to work around their childcare. Like at what point is it okay to kind of bend what it is that you would like if you have someone that's the right fit?
I'm gonna jump in on that one for one point. So, it's really setting out the expectations of the job and what is expected from a deliverable. So one of the things that, when I left the corporate world 10 years ago to start this business, I had lost a very good friend. It was kind of my wake-up call that said, I need some balance. I want to have control over my calendar. I want to have the ability to go to my kids' concerts and be an involved mother. So that's why I left the corporate world to start this business. And so my philosophy as a business owner is that I don't want our staff to miss anything. I don't want them to miss kids' concerts. I don't want them to hold off going to a doctor appointment. I want them to do those things. But it's with the expectation that they're going to do their job. So it's okay if you need to go to the doctor, or you need to go to a concert, or you have to pick up from camp in the summer. But there's an expectation that you're going to put in the additional time when needed, that you're there when the client needs you. So it's a bit of a give and take relationship. So I think that as an owner and an entrepreneur and you're out looking for someone, if you are going to give some flexibility to your employee, that they understand it's a give and take. And in I know that some of the people we talk to sometimes come on this phone call and on this EMomNow your hangouts, that they may have one employee and they're working from home. So it's not like the person is coming into the office every day, but it's really important that there's a very clear arrangement that is set up out front about it's as long as the work is getting done, and maybe there's core hours, right? So we came into a problem where for us, one of our employees had childcare that was done at 3, but we needed her on until 5. So there's some things that you just have to consider. Can you really run your business? And and I've learned the hard way, to be honest, that if you can't run your business because you're trying to be too flexible, that can come back and also be tough on you. So I would be careful that you don't make your arrangements so flexible at the beginning that you can't run your business the way you need. If you have hours of work that are 9 to 5 and you need coverage, you don't want to hire someone who says, well, I would love to help you, but I can only work from 10 to 2 because I have childcare and I have to pick up. That person's probably not the person you should hire for the job if they can't meet the core hours of the job. Right.
And a good way to kind of ask those questions are that, this is the requirement of the job. Does this work for your schedule? So that's a good way to ask the question. You don't have to ask, do your childcare interfere? Does your childcare arrangements interfere with this? You just ask the question. These are the hours. This is the expectation. Are you available during those hours and to do that kind of work? If it's to travel or to do whatever, will that work for your schedule? So that's, certainly something to consider. And I mean, back to the kind of questions to ask, you really do ask those more open-ended questions. I think that's is, instead of just saying, do you have this skill, you ask, a good example for me is Excel. A lot of people, how are your Excel skills? And they'll go, excellent. A better way to ask that question is, on a scale of beginner, intermediate, or advanced, where would you put your Excel skills? And when they answer that question, you follow up with another question to say, they say intermediate. What would make it advanced? Why is it not beginner? What things do you think make it intermediate? You just ask the follow-up questions, but you, again, stay away from those areas that you want to avoid.
So 9 years ago, when I was doing HR, they had the questions were leading questions. So tell me what you would do in a situation when. Are those still the same kind of questions that are being asked now?
Yeah, I think that behavioral interviewing is always a good foundation, and behavioral interviewing is basically based on past experience and past performance. So you ask questions about what have you done, or give me an example of a time where you delivered great customer service. Those kind of questions. But I also like to do the hypothetical questions. What would you do in situations? Because sometimes their experience may not fit exactly with what you know as an owner that might come up in your business. So you might want to ask, how would you deal with a situation? Maybe you had a situation that happened this week. use that as an example. What would you do in that situation? It gives you a really good, you know, idea of what they're capable of.
So we know what kind of questions we can ask. You guys have been really helpful with the kind of questions that we can legally ask and we haven't. Let's say when you're hiring for the first time, oftentimes, you kind of go out to your own personal base and say, hey, I'm looking for someone as a personal assistant or a bookkeeper. How do you define, how would those persons define like more of a professional role, especially when they're interviewing or working with someone that is a personal friend? Or would you kind of lean against that?
I would probably not ever hire a personal friend. Yeah. I can only give my advice from my experience is that we have consciously chosen to use, whether it's our accountant, someone who's doing bookkeeping, IT, people who are not, the friends and family, because if you run into problems, you're not getting the service you need, I think it's much harder to get rid of that. And we're proud of where we are after 10 years. And I was always about, you have to spend a little money to make money. And that sometimes what happens when you start a business is you have friends and family and people say, oh, I'll help you. I can help you. Don't worry. I'll do your books or I'll do this or I'll do that. And I've always been of the mindset that I really want to go and do this, pay for someone who can do those services. So I think in the long run, it really does help to pay for some of those services.
So for someone starting out hiring their own person, do not go friends first.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so someone starting out, it's best not to go friends first. But what did you do if you're an employee and you've got more than 10 employees and you'd have a referral? Like, does that kind of infringe on that same kind of thought process, that not to hire friends and family?
Oh, from employees, you mean?
Yeah.
I would not tonight, and we have an interesting scenario here in our organization because we have a number of people who have referred people who they know, and I think when you're looking for employees, and let's take family out of it. So let's take family out and just add friends, because I would say that hiring family, you just have to know what you're getting into when you're hiring family. We help a lot of family businesses, so we're members of CAFE, the Canadian Association for Family-Owned Enterprises. So we're not against hiring family members as employees. Wouldn't be our first choice, but it's actually a wonderful way to hire because the statistics show that if you're hiring, I'm going to say not family, say friends, when a good employee hires or refers someone they know, the likelihood and the turnover rates are much lower, retention is higher, and the employee is usually much better when they come through a referral of an existing high-performing employee versus finding someone, randomly through LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think when your culture is really small, it's really important that people, like each other and get along. And so you do find that those referrals actually help with that process. And you're not going to find an employee to refer someone if they don't think the person's going to work out, because they're not going to put their reputation on the line either. So we strongly encourage referral, but we still think that even though you get a referral, you need to do your due diligence. So you still need to make sure that the right person for the job, and not just relying on, if the referral is someone you really value, you still need to do your due diligence, because you can't just assume that they knew exactly what you're looking for. So I would say definitely use referrals, but still do the same process. Make sure that you know what the job is, and make sure you do the interviews.
We have a question up here. Did you want us to address the question?
I was just about to say, so now we've got to the point where we've hired someone, we're excited about it. So do we need a lawyer to draw up a contract, or is it okay to use a generic for basic rules?
Our position is absolutely do not use generic contracts. There are very important clauses that need to be in contracts that only a very seasoned HR professional or a labor and employment lawyer know. Interestingly enough, So we have an employment law practice. It's called Rodney Employment Law. So we have 2 lawyers who are on staff at Max People Perform and work for our HR clients. And sometimes what happens, and again, this is very common, is that you have a lawyer who does real estate and they do corporate deals and they do wills and they're like a general lawyer and they say, oh, I had that lawyer look at the contract. But our experience is that a general lawyer does not know a lot about employment contracts. They know contract work from maybe going to law school, but they don't know about employment contracts. So if you're going to go out and get a lawyer, please make sure you're using an employment lawyer. It makes a very big difference. And then the other piece of advice I would say is absolutely get a lawyer or a seasoned HR professional to be looking at your contract. And even seasoned HR professionals don't always have the legal background. Contracts typically don't leave our office until one of the lawyers have looked at them. We also practice employment law here, so we get to see the other side of it where, on the employer side, the employees are coming after the employer. We pull it up. They're lucky sometimes if they even have a contract. Sometimes it was a handshake. So then they're in trouble because they didn't have one.
Yeah.
Or they have a contract, but they missed very important components of the contract, which had to do about what the employee was entitled to. And there's lots of other things that have to do with that piece. And I'll let Geraldine touch on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pieces around, what happens if it isn't working out, what are you going to do in terms of terminations? Those kind of things really need to be emphasized. What the job responsibilities are, those kind of things are really important, because then it's really not worth the paper it's written on if it doesn't have those kind of clauses in it. And we work with many employees and employers that are on both sides of not having good contracts in place, and it becomes very messy and costly in the end.
Absolutely.
So we have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
How much generally would it cost? Would you think that a base contract would cost?
So, people are calling in, I understand, and connecting from all across Canada. I think rates really change across the country. So what you may pay for a Toronto lawyer may be different than an Ellis lawyer, an East Coast lawyer. But generally, for an employment lawyer to look at something on an hourly rate, maybe somewhere around, $300 to $400 an hour, and $4 be on the high side, I think. And typically we're going to be a few hours of time. So if you go to a lawyer and they tell you it's going to cost $2,000, you're being taken for a bit of a ride. There, a few hours, between $300 to $400. It would be the best spent money you have. And once you have your contract, you don't have to keep doing it. So it's really smart to get a really good template to start from, spend some money up front with an employment lawyer, get the proper kind of contract, and then as you bring on each employee, assuming the rules aren't too different, like salespeople's contracts are obviously different than consultants' contracts because they've got different kind of drivers, but you would have a good foundation of a contract that you can reuse.
And I think it's one of those things. It's like hiring, like any professional service, is that you're hiring this to get this done properly. But at the same time, is if you don't get this done properly, and or you get sued, or or anything, it's important to have that base and have yourself set up properly. Then just kind of going back and and then losing your business, losing your house, and all the rest of it that could come along with it with legal worries. So I am 100,000% with you. Like, you just need to. It's one of those things you just need to have done. It's like having a bookkeeper. You need to have one.
I agree. When I started the business, I said again, I paid to. I think you had certain things you had to invest when you started a business, and that would be one of the things. I remember when I first started, my accountant was trying to tell me I could do my own bookkeeping. So some people here may have strong bookkeeping skills. I do not. And so that was one of the first things I said, that was worth the money to have an accountant and someone doing that, because there were things I just would have missed. So it's the same thing. Why would you try to do your own employee relations, terminations, contracts, if that's not your area of expertise? I mean, Nicole, you're an HR person, so you understand it, but it's like I would never expect to do my own accounting, so why would you want to do your own HR and labor and employment law if that's not your background?
My other thought on that, too, is that you've spent this $300-400 on this contract, and you're hoping that you've hired someone. Like, I think people think that hiring is a free thing. It's not a free thing. That employee, you've got the training of that employee. the hours that you're paying while you're training them, and all the other things that kind of come in. And are they going to bring in money? And if you've not hired the right person, that person's costing you money. So to have the
Yeah.
foundation properly is so important.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's, I'm probably going off track a little bit from HR, but to just entrepreneurship and running a business, is that you want to have a lot of metrics and have a dashboard in place. So it goes back to your role, so that our salespeople have targets. They know what they're expected to hit. We talk to our consultants about billable hours and how many hours they should be billing, because in order to bring on an employee, you need to be able to show that there's profitability in having the salaries of those employees.
Right.
So it's only fair to be very transparent with your employees to say, we want to keep you and we want you to be here, but we have to be able to make it work that way. And whatever it is, whether you're hiring a programmer or a designer or whatever it is for your business, someone who's decorating cupcakes, whatever it may be, if you don't sell so many cupcakes, then you won't be able to keep them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Employees are not free. They're far from it.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff should be in the contract then? Like off the top of my head, I'm thinking, whether it's full-time, part-time, hours per week, vacation, if there's going to be benefits. What other kind of stuff should be there?
And I was going to say that these kind of questions, I think we probably should have people reach out to us after the session. We have kind of more specifics we can give. It's kind of tough we can give you some general answers to that, but I think on a contract basis, it's really an individual, depending on the organization, depending on the role. The province, exactly. So there's things about confidentiality and solicitation. There's things regarding hours of work. Maybe there's something on sick time and on, time that you're off work for any type of illness. But I think something like that's probably easier to actually have something in front of you from a contract. But those are the general ones you see in contracts, are about confidentiality and solicitation and the role of the work and the days of when it started and what the salary is going to be, and typically when your salary is going to be reviewed again and how you'll be performance managed. All of those types of components are in it.
And one of the main components I think a lot of people don't do is have a job description or job profile as part of that offer letter, because this is the requirements for that, the compensation that you're going to be paying. This is the job that's being outlined, and there always has to be the all other duties as assigned, but you do need to be able to measure some of the absolute essentials to the job. And I think it's important in the offer stage that you're saying this is what your job is going to be. So that's something that a lot of small businesses and even larger businesses don't always do, and I think that's an important component.
Right. Oh, I agree. So we've hired them, and we've got a contract, and they're starting. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is something else that human resources professionals do. It's not just the hiring and the firing; it's the retention. So retention being making sure that the employees are doing their job and they're happy and they want to stay there, because like we talked about a few minutes ago, it is expensive to hire. So what kind of things can human resources professionals do to kind of keep retention and keep employees happy and that sort of thing?
So I'll start off with a few things that I think are absolutely essential. It doesn't matter how small the business is. I think that you need to set people up for success. You need to make sure that they have all the tools and information that they need. So I think it's really important to have a plan in place for their, you can call it onboarding, you can call it orientation, you can call it whatever you want, but really think about not just their first day and taking them out to lunch, but the first week, the first month, the first 60 days, 90 days. What's it going to look like? What kind of things are you going to do to check in with them and have conversations with them, make sure they're on the right track? So I think it's really important to kind of put those things in place, and some small things that sometimes people don't think about. If you are going to be working with them in an office location, things like providing them with restaurants that are nearby. So on not their first day necessarily, but as they're ongoing, there's maybe this is where the drugstore is. This is some nearby restaurants that you might want to use for lunch or try for lunch, things like that. So there's a lot of little things you can do, and just be prepared for them on the first day and not look like, oh, they're a nuisance.
Mhm.
really have time for them and spend that time.
And then
Yeah.
like halfway through, so there's things like reviews. So whether it's quarterly reviews or yearly reviews. What kind of stuff do you do in those areas to keep employees engaged and happy?
I mean, I can tell you what we do here. So when people come on board, I'll reiterate what Geraldine said is that, and Teresa, who's helped us organize this today, she's our office coordinator, and she ensures that on someone's first day coming here, they have a laptop that works, totally set up, the phone line, they have email. We have an orientation plan for them, what they're going to do in the first day, what they're going to do in the first few weeks. We didn't have that when we first started the business. Obviously, one employee, you think, oh, they'll just figure it out. But even on your very first employee, it helps for them to know what are they going to do in their first few weeks. The other thing that's built into contracts, and this also helps sometimes when you're looking at employees and what you can pay them, is sometimes it depends on how much the business generates business in order on how much you can increase their salary. If business is doing well, you could always say in their contract that you'll have a mid-year review, and in 6 months you can revisit their compensation. So that's something you could write into the contract, but then also you should have a 6-month review. And so we do 6-month reviews and year-long reviews, and we have a form that we use that goes back to values, goes back to fit. So it lets the employee know on an ongoing basis, it's not just twice a year, we're talking all the time, but to keep them engaged, that we have those conversations, and they have to be honest. There's no sense in sugarcoating that piece. They're really honest conversations going both ways. We ask our employees a lot as owners, what else can we do to make life easy for you? What other support do you need? I think that's another way to keep your employees engaged, is letting them know that you haven't just hired them and let them stay alone in their house and do that, but you keep a human connection.
Right. And so let's talk about, we want to talk about SMART objectives then, about those kinds of things that are included in a review.
So, sorry, so you're asking, do we set SMART objectives?
Yeah, and maybe like what SMART objectives are and why they're important.
So in the reviews that we do, and we help our clients do that. So SMART, if our people don't know, they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. So it's not good enough to say deliver customer service, because deliver customer service, how do you say in 6 months whether they're doing it or not? Right. So you want to we make them specific enough. So for our HR consultants, how do we know they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? Client feedback says that they're enjoying working with them and they're delivering on things. For us, systems are really important, that consultants docket their time so we can actually know if our clients are going way over or how much time. So, are they, so we can actually go in and see that things have been docketed. So I think when you're starting your business, you want to think about what are the metrics that you can weave into the performance review that will tell you whether the person's doing their job or not. It could be, that they're error-free, there aren't mistakes in there, if there's no errors, things like that.
I think that the SMART objectives, it may seem like my husband is a manager. He gets it, but he thinks they're time-consuming and annoying. But and they can be. I mean, they can be annoying if someone is happy in their job and they're just happy kind of going along and every day, and this person is a great employee, and why change, what doesn't need fixing. It's important as well for the employee, so the person coming into your business, to be able to say, prove, okay, this is what I've done, and this is why what I've done is important, and these are the things. So it's not just for the managers, but maybe you as an owner can look at your manager and say, okay, well, no, this person's right. They have done all these things. Where is the disconnect here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just say that person then is no good, and we're ready to let them go. What is the process then of termination? I know you said you did this a lot because not having the right hire. Should we start with the termination process?
I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think unfortunately I've done a lot of terminations in my career. It's not my favorite part of the job, but when it needs to be done, it needs to be done, and we talk about that early on about firing fast. You make the decision. You still do your due diligence. You make sure, we strongly recommend, utilizing professionals, employment lawyers, make sure that you're doing it correctly. One of the key components for me is always doing it with dignity, making sure that you are handling it well. I have been thanked after terminations, believe it or not. I think it's how you handle it is really important for your business going forward, your reputation, and you certainly, but you need to do that in a way that's effective. And so definitely making sure that legally you're compliant. And if you don't have an employment agreement in place, you are going to be looking at, in most legislations, you're going to be looking at paying more than the statutory minimums, and you need to understand that. And so you should be reaching out to employment lawyers, to get really good advice, because it is a very important. It can drag on and be very draining if it's not done correctly.
So
And
do we
then
want to start then with the statutory minimums and what that is?
Yeah, so each province legislates, minimums in terms of notice periods, and depending on the size of your organization, most of the organizations here would be, just not having to pay severance, but they would have to be paying a statutory notice. In Ontario, it's almost a week per year of service, but certainly it varies depending on different circumstances. There's also, common law, which means that if you don't have a termination agreement in place, you may have to, be paying depending on their length of service, their age, different factors that go into determining how much you need to be paying, and how you treat people in terms of references, all those kinds of things that you want to be able to provide, so that that employee may not work in your environment, but may still be a good employee for someone else. So you want to make sure that you haven't, erased their chances to find alternative employment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And another piece of the termination that I think is really important we forget about is that if you're an entrepreneur and you're working in a home business and you're terminating someone who's working in their home, and you don't have the ability to maybe go and get some of the items that are owned by the company, and even if you have an office, and they're in a cubicle and they're coming in, one of the important things Geraldine said is doing it with dignity and being mindful of how it's done, is when it's done, and that's why we have done a lot of terminations here for people, because we're professionals at terminating, and there's a lot of components that people don't think about. It's like time of day. Do you get all the property back for the company? Is it a company cell phone? Is it a company laptop? Where's all your information? Do they own your information? Do they have a chance to take proprietary information? You could, for some entrepreneurs, when you're small, if that person goes and it's not done well, that could be the end of your business. Right? Because they could be taking everything with them if it's not done properly.
And that's where the employment agreements come in again, because then you make sure that company provided equipment and information is company. And so again, we strongly recommend a good employment lawyer to look at both ends of that.
And sometimes, obviously it's in their agreement. They may have signed it 5 years ago, but when it came time to actual termination day, those things just got forgotten. And whether they meant it or not, but we've had challenges with clients getting things like cell phones, laptops, keys to the office, giving them a chance to come back and take their personal items. Is there a need for security? Things like that.
So how then, this is something that I didn't even think of. You're totally right. Like, how do you get that stuff back? Do you ask politely? What if they're kind of a nightmare?
Yeah. Okay. That's where the skill set of working with a professional really, really makes a difference. So, often it's that they want to be able to, it's a bit of a pride. It's, if you're asking someone to, I'm sorry, now's your last day, and I'm going to need you to, leave the office, and you're going to be escorted out, something like that. If you're doing something like that, and could you please hand things over? One of the things is it's really about using a professional who realizes that they may have family photos. They can have all their own personal things sitting on that. That would be unfair to not allow them to have some of that information back. So there has to be, oftentimes we sit with people. So we will sit with the employee. Will they download their personal items onto a stick? There's something that they want to make sure that they take. So I think it's about doing it where the person is not humiliated. They understand why, and it really is a give and take. If the person's in their home office, well, obviously you're never going to terminate over a phone or through email. So I don't think we even mentioned that. But I'm thinking if the person is in another location, you've hired them, to work and support you. You just have to be really careful that you've received all the backup and items before you have this conversation. And ideally, it's all being done face to face, where you have the opportunity to get things back.
Wow. So how would it, I mean, I didn't even think about that. That is maybe why I'm not in HR anymore. So.
Unfortunately, we've had a lot of it. So
Yeah, right. Um, so how then, I mean, we're talking about retention and you've got that nightmare person and you're trying really hard to kind of make it all fit and like, and I know as a HR professional, there's a lot of mediation going on between employees. So how is the best way to deal with that difficult person? Is it sometimes just better to let them go?
I really think so. If you're, as Julie mentioned before, if you're up at night and you're thinking about that person a lot, you're thinking about every conversation you've had with them, really it's consuming too much of your time and your energy. It is time to make that decision. And I would also emphasize, because I know a lot of times with the small businesses that we work with, they try to encourage people to resign. And sometimes if you're having good conversations, then it might result in that, like, a mutual decision. But I would caution you very, very strongly not to kind of force that, because that can lead to even more issues. But when you've made the decision, you make the decision and you actually plan for it, and you have that difficult conversation and say, this just isn't working.
Yeah. So that you have your letter ready, you have a termination letter already done. And usually, and I think most people would say this, is that once someone has been terminated, in the end, they're usually happy. Because usually they know it's not working out and the fit isn't there. And most often when I check back with people where the termination has been done well, they were, like Geraldine said, they're thanking you. They knew it wasn't working. They were struggling themselves in the role, and they were just really waiting for a reason to why they could, move on to something different in their lives.
Right. So then, usually when the termination, I guess, dependent on the laws, like you give them 2 weeks. But what are the meetings that you have up to, and why I guess the quarterly meetings and those kinds of things are important to kind of say, like, what are legitimate reasons you can fire someone for, whether it be performance, or can you fire someone for fit because they're kind of miserable.
I think what you're getting at is more of a legal component, which is whether someone is being let go and being given a package versus someone is being let go without getting any type of compensation with a package. And I can tell you, I mean, Jordan's not here, but who heads up our employment law practice, is in probably all his years of law, he would say he has very rarely let someone go with cause. So it's with cause and without cause. So most of the time when you're letting someone go, it's without cause anyway. So it doesn't really matter what you tell them, whether it's performance management, it's their attitude, it's whatever it is. The business isn't doing well. Whatever you're telling the employee why you're letting them go, it doesn't matter anyways, because you're going to be letting them go with a package without cause. Right. To let someone go for cause, meaning theft, harassment, the kind of heavy ones. And what we've seen over time is that people still get let go without cause, even if they have harassed someone, they have stolen from the company.
Yeah.
They are still let go without cause and given something, just so that they will be quiet and go away and not cause problems, and it'll all be fine.
Right.
So it's going to be pretty bad for someone to have been let go and not been paid anything by the company.
Right. Which is another thing. I mean, hiring that first person, hiring the right person. I mean, firing's expensive as well. So having that first person, have them right and having them fit perfectly and be great at their job, or even be able to be trained to do their job, not have to terminate them. I mean, terminating is also extremely expensive. I mean, getting that right person at the get-go is so important. So just as we've got 6 minutes left here, do you want to talk about, maybe we can go through the top things to do to prepare, assuming that you're hiring your first employee or your 10th employee? What are some of the things that you need to do before you prepare for your interview?
Our hiring process, I think.
Prepare for the interview or prepare for their first days?
For their interview, what are some things you need to do? Because it is so important that you hire the right person.
I think again, it's back to having a very defined job, a job profile. What are the things you're going to be looking for this person to do? Developing really kind of structured questions on those absolute competencies, whether it's the technical skills that they need, or the the more softer skills, and making sure that you're asking the right questions, that you set up an interview and you be very formal about it. I mean, as much as you want it to be a kind of a relaxed conversation, you do need to make sure that you're going through, that you've asked questions in each of those areas. And then I really recommend kind of rating each of those areas, because then often when we even go through that process of interviewing, we'll say we like them, we don't like them, but we don't really know why. And we need to go back and look at, okay, how did they rate in customer service questions? How would you rate your customer service skills? Even in terms of your phone interaction and your in-person interaction, if they're that way with you, likely they're going to be that way with your customers and outside people. So I think it's really important to, really time both upfront and then after the interview to kind of say, determine that. And I would also suggest that even if you've got only one candidate and you really like them, try get more referrals or try to get more people to interview so that you can compare what you're looking for.
Just to kind of go off, just off the track of hiring someone as an employee, how different is it hiring a freelancer or a contractor than hiring an employee? Is it the same process?
I can answer that from how we started our business. So when we started our business, we had people on difference between a contractor and on contract. So, and again, I don't want to get into too much legal stuff. I know we're done in a few minutes, but the idea that our employees could do work for other people. So one of our HR consultants, she used to also teach at the university, and she used to do different things. And so it gave them the ability to work for us, but if they picked up other non-competing work when they were working with us, that was a very important thing for us. But then about 2 years ago, we moved everyone to the employee model because we really didn't want to be people sending us in their bills and their hours that they'd worked. So we changed our model. So it's a definitely conscious decision as an employer whether you want to have people on contract, hire contractors, or have employees. We've gone the route of employees. It's an expensive model, but it's one that we really feel is for growth of our business and build more retention and keeps employees feeling really a part of the organization. But it took us a number of years to get there where everyone's on employee model. We started off with people because it was safer, where we could say, you have 20 hours of work this week, and we commit people to how many hours were within their contract.
So it's a lot. What are some of the benefits then having an employee over having a freelancer?
Well, one of the things is if you're going to have a freelancer, you want to make sure that they understand the values of your organization, they understand the importance of client focus. So if you hire a freelancer, and I'm sure that happens a lot from these entrepreneurs on the line, the person who's helping you with your design is also helping 5 other companies with their design. So you just have to find out how much you need that person. So we outsource our IT, we outsource our printing, we outsource our accounting. Those things we outsource because we're okay if those people are working for other people. But there's certain parts that we've brought in-house. We've brought marketing in-house. We've brought our HR consultants in-house because we believe that our HR consultants are more committed to our business, our clients. They're more part of the kind of organization we want to create. And that's what we get from that. So I'm a supporter of the employee model, but there's no question it's more of an expensive way to go.
Yeah. Yes. So just finishing up here, we're coming up on the hour. I really would like to thank you both, Julie and Geraldine, for coming today. Julie has offered 15% to help you get started with hiring people properly, and I hope from listening to this that you'll realize that it's not just a case of just, hiring your next door neighbor to start doing, stuff that is supposed to be making you money. This is your business. So we'll have that up on the EMomNow site and on our Facebook page as well. And then if you have any questions, Julie has been graceful enough to give her email, which we'll post up later. If you have any questions, you can ask her, which was very nice, very nice. Will people be able to ask questions on Twitter as well, Julie?
Yeah, so really it'll be more like Ask Geraldine, but if you, I will go through all the emails and make sure I can get a sense of who to go to in our company, because Geraldine was kind enough to be on our call today. But in case she's not available, because she's with clients, we have employment lawyers, other consultants in our firm. So if people email me what their issue is, I can make sure someone on our team helps get them the answer. And if they need actual work done, then we're happy to service them.
Right. And so just so anyone knows that if you need an HR professional for your company, Julie's company can fly into your company and say, hey, this is what you need to do. Let me do this for you, so that they can take that whole stress of hiring your first person off you, which I think is amazing, because it is a thing unto its own. It is like having an accountant or having a lawyer. You can't just do this. It's like hiring your neighbor. So I really encourage you to contact Julie if you need someone, and that's it. So Julie, thank you so much. Geraldine, thank you so much as well. Is there anything you guys want to add before we go offline?
We want to just thank you for the opportunity to share our knowledge with this group, and we look forward to having other opportunities to talk to these amazing women live who are running these businesses.
Great. Well, thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay.